is Judy Auslander. I was born August 31st, 1922 in Czechoslovakia, Užhorod.
What was your Yiddish name?
This one is going?
It's okay.
My Yiddish name is Scheindl.
Who were you named after?
I have no idea. I couldn't find out because I never met my grandmother died, so the only thing I know when I was a little girl, not having, my mother died, I was 2 years old.
Do you remember her at all?
No, no. I was 2 years old and I had a brother, his name was Auslander, Herman Auslander. He was 2 years older from me. And my father used to take me down to my grandfather in a different village. It was like Akron, it wasn't a village, like Akron, he lived there. My grandfather was, he taught Yiddish children in temple for Haider, what is it?
Hebrew school.
A Hebrew school, yes. And I used to stay with him, and I used to adore my grandfather. He was very good to me and to my brother because my father had to travel and he had no place to leave us.
Was this your father's father? Or your mother's
My
father?
father's father. My father's father, yes. And I stayed quite a lot of times by him. I used to, for my life, it used to be the best times of my life when I was with my grandfather.
Was your grandmother alive? So it was your mother. Your mother had died and your grandmother had
Yes. I just had the funny part of it, I was never with women, my father or with my grandfather, always, or one or the other one. I was shipped from, my father had 5 brothers and 3 sisters. Every month I find myself by a different aunt and a different uncle whom I never met before.
For long periods of time?
I remember one, like Chicago, my father put me on a bus and I was very, very little. And I used to cry a lot. There were 7 sons, not one girl. And my father told me, they're going to love you because you're the only girl going to be in the house. And I was so terrified.
Did your brother go too?
No, my brother was shipped to a different end.
Where were your mother's parents?
My mother's parents were at Karl's Seredně, Karl's, it's a different Czechoslovakian, like a village at the time. It's say further like Akron, my mother's side. But from my mother's side, I really, truly didn't know anyone. The only one I knew was an aunt, and the family name was Berkovich. My mother's name was Rose Berkovich. My mother's name was Rose Berkovich. They come from a small town who I really didn't know anyone except one uncle who I stayed with him for a while. I did. But when I was older already, I find out that they are. And my grandfather from my mother's side owned a mill where they make flowers. I remember once I was there, just once.
When you say that you went to these places, how long did you stay in each place?
I went with my father in, we went, he wanted me to meet my grandfather, who, from my mother's side. We stayed there maybe one day, and I remember I had such a great time. It's in the wood, and they had the big flour mills, and I was fascinated by it. But I didn't stay there. I didn't stay long enough to get to know my grandfather.
How come you didn't stay there?
Because my father had the 2 children. He had to work. We went like to Cleveland, and he made his life there. I lived there in Cleveland with him. And the only thing I knew, he shipped me from one uncle from his side, not from my mother's side. My mother's side somehow completely closed the door. Completely was closed the door. Mostly from my father's side I went to.
So how old were you when you were doing all this?
When I went to this uncle of mine who had 7 sons, and not one of them came back, I want you to know. Not one. I must be around 7 years old, because I remember, I will never forget it, I got a hold of my father's foot and I used to cry, please don't send me. I'm a girl, there's all men, and I feel terrible, I feel ashamed. And my father put me on a bus, and I guess my uncle was waiting for the bus and picked me up. And they were very nice. You know what they owned? They owned a mikveh. You know what a mikveh is? They owned a mikveh. And the boys were very nice. They were all older boys for me, and I was little. I was just like a little kid, and my father's brother used to take me to he was cleaning the mikveh, and I had a lot of fun with him because it was a mikveh. I was fascinated.
So were they religious?
They were not, they were from, but they were not so from, you understand? But they did own the mikveh, and I remember very distinctly, he said, Scheindl, come with me here, the guy is in the mikveh, washing the mikveh and clean up, to clean up the mikveh. And they were very good to me. My aunt was good to me, and
so you liked it there?
I liked it. And then I came back. I was shipped to another uncle.
So how long were you there?
I was every month in some other home. Almost every month.
Didn't you have to go to school?
I went to school. I went here to school. Then I came back to school. You see, my father couldn't help himself. He had like a shoe repair shop, and he had to travel. He had to pick up some here and there, some shoes, like a shoe store. He had to go. He had no place to leave us, so he had no choice. He couldn't. He did. Once in a while, he put us in the house. We had like a 1 bedroom and a small kitchen. He locked us into a lot of times. He couldn't go out because he took the key and we were not allowed to come out. He had to go.
So that would be for 1 day?
For 1 day. For 1 day and a night. We used to stay by ourselves too. And then he had to go for a longer time. I have a cousin in Canada. This is again my father's brother. And his brother's wife was very good to me. We're going now this month to Canada to his daughter's wedding. They were very good to me. I stayed there many, many times. They always accepted me.
How many brothers did your father have?
My father had 5 brothers and 3 sisters.
So these were the people that you went month to month at
Month to month. Every month I was in a different home.
Until what age?
Till I was 8 years old. My father remarried. I got a very bad stepmother who used to beat me. My brother was 10. He used to beat us a lot. She didn't like us. We were in their way, in her way.
Did she have children also?
No, she was never married before. She married my father with 2 kids, and there was a lot of fiction between my father and her, upon the kids, upon us, and we overheard it. One day my brother said, Susan, we have to leave. We cannot survive here. We have to get away.
Did your dad know you were so unhappy?
He knew, but he did not believe us. He used to come home, and I used to tell him, one day my stepmother hit me so much over the head, I fell over the chair, and my brother used to go to the neighbors to take me to the hospital. I had stitches in my head. Then my brother said, when we don't go, both of us will die. My brother left to a complete stranger, took him in the same town. He stayed with them. He got very little paid, but he got board and they taught him to be a textile. They had like a textile factory to sell yard goods. He went in with them, and I went away. I wasn't even 10 years old. I went to my mother's brother, like to Chicago. This is the only one I remembered. They had a hardware store, and I went there, and I stayed there till I was almost 14 years old.
You went there, you ran away?
I ran away. My brother put me on a bus. He had some money from, I don't know from where, and he paid for the bus, and he wrote a letter. And my brother wrote a letter, and he said, please just put her on the bus and let her come to us. This is the only time I ever met the people.
So you...
This is Berkowitz.
You lived with the stepmother for how long?
I lived with the stepmother just a few years, because it was unbearable.
You think like 2 years?
About 2 years, yes.
And after 2 years, your brother, how did he get the job?
You see, in Europe it's different. In Europe they take you out when you little, you go to school and they train you for a trade. You know, I have a trade in Budapest, and I went to learn a trade in Hungary, and they were teaching him. In this way, they have help, and they gave him board, and where he can stay. They gave him like a room he can stay. So this is the way he stayed there. He left the house completely. He left there, but in the same city.
So he was 12?
He was around, he was around 12. He was 2 years older for me, yes. But he was so grown up because he had to watch over me. He had a big responsibility because he was the older one. Always looked after me. Not enough, he had problems.
So then you went to Chicago, to the place.
I went, this is the first time my brother paid for the bus, and I went on the bus, and they waited for me, and I was there till almost 14 years. When I was 14, I left there because they expected me to stay there forever, work for them with nothing, and I started thinking, I had a tough life. How can I stay here just to be a maid? Helping, and there was no future for me.
Did they have children?
She had one daughter. They were very rich people. They owned a big hardware store. They owned a tremendous big building with yards. But I looked around. This is no future for me. Should I stay all my life here, but just to be a companion for her daughter?
Well, how old was her daughter?
The daughter was much older for me. So one day I got up and I said, I want to go to Budapest. They were shocked. They couldn't believe it. I said, I am leaving. With your consent or not, I am going. This is no future for me here. I'm going to Budapest. I'll learn a trade. I'll go to work in the evening. I'll go to school. I make something out of my life. I did go to Budapest. I left. I packed up. It was a January, a tremendous big snowstorm. I never was in Budapest. I never knew where Budapest is.
How far was Budapest from where you were born?
That I was born from Budapest, about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, by train. How did I go to Budapest? I read a Jewish paper, and it says we help all the Jewish people when they come. They should come to Jewish Vocation Service. They'll give them a helping hand, not realizing I arrived Sunday, and the Jewish Vocation Service was closed Sunday. So here I am off from a train, not knowing a soul. I have one suitcase, and I'm sitting by the Jewish Vocation Service on a suitcase, and the tears are rolling down my face. Too much money. I didn't have nothing. An older lady passed by, and she says, my kid, why are you crying? I said, because I came to the Jewish Vocation Service. I just arrived. They are closed. She said, don't you have any place to go? I said, no. She took me in for the night. Next day, I went on my own, and I looked around, and I found a Jewish couple. They said, we'll accept a young woman to stay with us. We have a bed, but you have to pay so much. And I find this housing. And they were an older couple. Their name was Mr. and Mrs. Spitz. And I lived there almost till I got married.
So, did your father know that you were in Budapest, or he did
He
know?
knew. He knew in Budapest, but he knew where I was by my aunt when I ran away, and he said he's going to bring me back with the police. And I said, I'll never come back because I have nothing to come back to. You never really liked us. You forgot the minute you married this woman. We were just in your way.
Did you write to him, or he came to see
I
you?
was so deeply hurt.
But how did you communicate with him?
I didn't. I did not. I couldn't forgive him. I always felt
Like he deserted you?
When I went to my uncle, the place is Saraspatak. It's a Hungarian city. And I stayed there till I was almost 14 and 14 when I came to Hungary, Budapest, but I never saw my father again. He wrote to me. I never answered. I couldn't answer for him because I was so deeply hurt. I said, it's no use to answer him. He never liked my brother. He never liked me.
What happened to your brother?
I wrote to my brother. My brother wrote to me. They took my brother, and I was already in Budapest. They took my brother, and I received a card from him. He said, Susan, stay on the train, by the train, on the train depot. Stay there a day and a night because they're taking us young kids, the Germans already, the Nazis, taking us through Budapest. And I want to see you. I know I'm not going to be alive anymore, but I want to see you once more in my life.
What year was this?
It was in 1943, I think so. 1944, 1943. And I stayed at the station. I never moved there, almost 3 days, because you don't know when the Nazis already were coming in. They were not in yet in Budapest, but the Nazis were in already there where I came from already, in Poland and Czechoslovakia, down there. They said they're going to bring him through Hungary, Budapest. They never did. He never came. He never arrived. I went up to the Red Cross, and the Red Cross told me they took him out to a field and they dig their own hole. They had to dig the mass grave, and they shot them all in the back, and not one Jewish kid is alive, for they're supposed to come through a whole train with kids. So I never saw my brother either.
Now, who was the Red Cross? Hungarians?
Hungarian, yeah. Every city in Europe too, they have Red Cross, so I had no place where to go to. I went up to the Red Cross, and the Red Cross, this was the answer from the Red Cross. When they're supposed to come through, they told them they're coming through, but they never did. They killed them. Where, I don't even know. They had no answer for me to give where they killed them. So I didn't see my brother, who I adored, and I didn't see my father at all, ever, nobody.
What happened to your father?
My father, they put him together like the other Jews, put him in a train and took him to the concentration camp.
Which camp did he go to? Do you know?
He was, but the story is, they were taking him through Czechoslovakia with my I had some brothers or sisters who I never saw.
That she had after
She
you
had,
left?
yes, I never saw 2 children. I think a boy and a girl. My father broke open a window and he jumped out from the train. And my father, a Czechoslovakian policeman, killed him in the woods, shot him in the woods in Czechoslovakia. And he's someplace in Czechoslovakia in the woods. I had no idea where. When I got married, we went back with my husband. And I heard my name on the radio. They killed the Auslander. They killed William Auslander.
Was that his name?
His name was William Auslander. But the pain was so severe in my heart because I lived with it. He never cared for me, for my brother. This is the only way we lived through. He never liked us. And my husband said, Susan, you want I should take you down to the police station? And I said, no, I can't go because my father didn't care for us.
Now, when was this?
This was in 1945.
So this was after the war?
After the war.
So he was killed after?
During the war. But after the war, they find the policeman who shot him.
Oh.
And it was a trial who this policeman, how many Jews he killed, shot himself with a gun. In between was my father.
But they never found him?
No, he was dead in some place in the woods. But I did the wrong thing. I should have gone out and followed it through. But when you're so deeply hurt and you live all your life in a feeling, we were in his way. He didn't like us. What should I take an effort when my husband, when my father never cared? You understand?
Oh, yeah.
So, the house where I grew up was a small house. We did not own a house. It was rent a house. We would rent a house. It just had one room, a bathroom, and a very small kitchen. And we all lived together. Even when my father remarried, before I left. And it was just a house that my father rented. We paid monthly rent. We did not own a house.
Was it a separate house like they have here, or was it an apartment?
No, it was like, in Europe they have like circles in one of the units. It's really like an apartment. It wasn't even a house, but it was like you know what it, turn it off. Or like a little thing, and everybody had a unit.
That's
So-
condominium.
So we lived downstairs, and this was
Did you have friends in the...
Yes, yes. My girlfriend Elaine, who saved my life, lived in the other unit.
How old was she compared to you?
She
Same
was
age?
3 years older from me. And she didn't have a father, she had a mother. And anything I didn't know, from a woman point of view, I always went in there, and they always were very nice to me. They always helped me. They were Catholic. She had other sister, and she had 3 brothers. There were 5 kids. They did not like Jewish people, but they were very good always to me. Her mother was very good to me. She always, I guess, felt sorry for me.
Okay.
They didn't like Jews, but because I was the neighbor and I was her daughter's girlfriend, we were always together. So they were very nice to me. And when I went to Hungary, Budapest, she came after me, my girlfriend. And we were together all the time.
She came after you when you left, when you were 14, and
Yeah.
you went to Budapest? So she came to find you.
But she was already much older. She was 17, and she had already a trade. She sewed. So she got right away a job, and I went and I applied to have a trade. And I learned for the trade.
What did
You have
you
to
learn?
3.5 years, and in the evenings I went to school. It was very, very hard. I got very little paid, and I had to give almost 3/4 of my pay for my rent where I lived for this older Jewish couple. And when we had one apple I shared it with her because she was always very good to me.
This is Elaine. the friend.
Elaine. And then when the Germans came in, I was ousted there. I got the first invitation to go into the camp, the concentration camp.
Because your name began with an A?
Mm-hmm. So I ran to Elaine. She was my whole life. I had nobody.
What did this say? What?
It didn't say invitation. It said a letter you must report to the police station tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Must. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock you don't come back anymore. They put you right away, they lock you up, and they put you on a train, and they take you to the to Auschwitz.
Did you know that that's where they took you?
No.
What did you think?
The stories were going around because anybody left, nobody ever came back.
But what did they tell you? Where did they tell you were going?
Well, we knew once like my husband knew, once you get the invitations to go to the camp, they knew. They didn't know where we're going and what's going to be, but everybody had an idea. You're going to Auschwitz, to the camp. Everybody knew.
So what did you do?
So I went to Elaine and I showed her the letter. My husband was there. He was with me. We were not married. No, we just knew each other. And Elaine said, "You're not going to go. You had a terrible life all your life. You're not going to go. I'll give you my papers."
How old were you then?
Figure it out. How old was I in 1945? In 1943? 1943.
19?
She gave me her papers, her maiden name, not her married name, her maiden name. She got married and she gave me her maiden name. And I went on her maiden name. And not her husband, not her brothers, nobody ever knew. She gave me the papers.
So when you didn't report to the police station?
I gave her my paper, my Jewish, my Susan Auslander, and I became her. When I came to Budapest, I met a boy. His name was Tommy Gross. He was the first man I ever met. He was very good to me. He knew he was born in Budapest, one of the richest boys in Budapest. They owned factories. And I met him, and we got engaged. We were supposed to get married. We were engaged, my God, almost 4 years, because we didn't want to get married because the life was so bad for the Jewish people at the time. And the mother, he was the only child. The mother was terribly against me. Again, here we go, against me, because I am just a very poor girl. I'm living with somebody else. I have nothing on my own. So the mother used to follow me all the time. Where I worked, I learned the trade and I worked there. She used to come up and she said to me, "Suzanne, I do everything in my power. You should never marry my son. I have nothing against you, but I picked a girl for my son who is very wealthy." But a month or 2 months before I got there, Elaine gave me the papers. Tommy came up to me and he said, "How are we going to do this one? What are we going to do?" My husband was a jeweler in Budapest. He was a manager for a big store. He made my engagement ring for Tommy. And then I find out I did not know him at home. He's from the same hometown, but he's much older from me, and I never knew him at home. I met him in Budapest where I worked.
So what year was this?
What year was it? I was 15, 16 years old when I got engaged. Let's go back the years. Then I met Al, and I told him I'm very much in love with Tommy. We're just going to be friends. We were always very good friends. Elaine is from the same hometown, and they knew each other. So before I went for the Goyish paper, with Elaine's paper, I took out the engagement ring and I gave it to him, and I said, "You know, Tommy, I don't think so we could be ever happy. Your mother will be always between us. And I'm smart enough to see I'm just going in trouble. And then I picked up the papers what Elaine gave me, and I went away for almost, 2 years. I became Elaine Geiger. I went away to Buddha.
Now you had to have the papers with you all the time?
All the time.
So that's what you mean when you say...
I put my Jewish paper in an envelope and I gave it to her to put it away. But she had, I will come to it, she had 3 brothers. All 3 of them were Nazis, SS Nazis. So she was afraid they'll see the papers, they'll find the papers in the house. She took the paper, she threw it in the incinerator, everything. I had a picture from my father, from my brother, she threw it all in the incinerator. I don't blame her, she was afraid for her own life. She put her life down for me, because when they'll catch me and they'll find out I'm living on it, they'll kill her first and then me. But she did it anyhow, because she cared for me. She was a good friend till this day. So I never saw Tommy again. He went to the same concentration camp. The young people, you know, they took a Munkatabor, it's a working camp. And I went this one. And my husband, they cut him in 1944 in Budapest, and they took him to concentration straight. This one I knew the day when they cut him, but we were just friends. And I lived through the war in a ministerium. I went to the army and I said, I am from so-and-so from Ungvar, and I want to be in the army. And they are the one who tell you what to do. You had to go to survive. Everybody. And they gave me a job, and I was like I worked like in the White House. I had a job with a other Catholic girl, her name was Ruth. I had a job to do certain errands for the company with this girl. Nobody ever knew I was Jewish. Every single day, 11 o'clock, we were underwater, the Dunai. Every 11 o'clock, there were a lot of Jewish kids, all ages. But they told them they're going nothing, just in a working camp. But they chained them together, the feet and the hand and the back, and they brought them and they lined them up before the water. And the Nazis, the SS guys from the back, killed every single one of them. Every single day. I had to watch it because nobody shot them from the back, and they threw them in the water. Every single day, 11 o'clock in the morning. I had to go to watch, because don't forget, I'm not Jewish, I'm Catholic. I wore a big cross. I went to church. I went to the confession box.
How did you know how to do all these
Elaine taught me. She told me what to do. She told me to go into confession box every Sunday to confess. I said, what should I confess? I went to the confession box because I went with the people after it. I left my Jewish people because they took them to the concentration camp. I had to find new housing. I found up in the mountain a housing who I helped out with the people, and I lived with them, but they didn't know I'm Jewish. I was Elaine Geiger, so Sundays we went to church together. I had to go to the confession box. Every week I said to the priest, my child, what are you confessing for? I says, Father, I was bad again. I slept with a man. Elaine told me what to say. I slept with a man, and he said to me, now why you do such a terrible things? I says, I don't know. This is the reason I came to confess my sin. So every week I had to say different things. This is the way I lived.
For how long?
Almost 2 years, almost a year and a half. And
now when you were raised, how Jewish were you at home?
I was very Jewish. Wasn't real very Orthodox, but conservative temple. My father did go and my brother went to the temple.
Every week on Shabbos?
Shabbos time, yes. There was a small community and the Jewish people did go. Like we are and like you are. But
so it was hard.
Very hard, very hard. I wore a cross. And one day I was going every Friday. We had to go across the Dunai with this route. Our job was Fridays to go for the payroll. From one Buddha in Paris is 2 cities. So I was in Buddha, my girlfriend lived in Paris. So we shouldn't be the same names in the 2 cities. So Fridays, every Friday we went by bus, by streetcar, not by bus, there were streetcars, over the water to Buddha, to Paris to pick up the payroll money with this route. And both of us carry every Friday 2 suitcases of money. We had to go back to the office because there was payroll Friday. And before everybody entered the streetcar, it was late already, and this route was in the middle of the streetcar. It was like in San Francisco, open streetcars. And I was hanging on the last step with 2 suitcases. And Ruth yells, "Elaine, please come up. You must be on the streetcar because we are late for the payroll." A man was standing ahead of me on the other step, and he kept kicking me. And he said, "I'll kick you off because you're going to fall off on the streetcar and it's going to go past the bridge." And I didn't want to get off. And he kicked me off in the streetcar van. Every single one of them, everybody died on the streetcar. I was the only one alive. Would you believe it?
Why?
The Germans put bombs on the bridges, and they blew up every bridge the same time. Everybody died. The man who kicked me down, everybody died. I was the only one alive.
Now, why did he kick you down?
He kicked me off for my own safety because he felt when the streetcar is going to start to go and I'm hanging at the bottom on the thing with 2 suitcases, I'll fall off. So he kicked me in my stomach to get off. So I went off and I stood there and I said, "My God, how will I go now back, with the money, with so much money?" I had to wait for the other streetcar. And they blew up all the bridges at the same time, all of them.
Did you know what happened?
I find myself on the floor, on the sidewalk, laying with my head down, and I didn't know what's happening. I thought somebody bombed from the thing. And my God, I look around, and the streetcar is in the water, people walking, cars. Everybody died because the bridge collapsed. I was the only one alive. I showed this one to my Bob, and my girlfriend Elaine came with us. And then who do I go to with the money, with the 2 suitcases of money? I go up to Elaine. Elaine, help me. What to do? I don't know what to do. Elaine stuck me in a room for 2 days, locked me in. She took the keys, and her husband said, "Elaine, I want to go in the room." She says, "I lost the key. I locked it and I lost the key, but I'll find it." I was locked in for 2 days then. After 2 days, I didn't know how to contact. I had the money. I'm an honest person. I don't need the money. Nobody's money. It didn't belong to me. Ruth, this Ruth who I've worked with, she died. I had to look for something to go across by boat. It took me a few days to go through, and I found a boat who took me across, and I walked in there with 2 suitcases. They thought I'm dead. And I worked all the way down in this ministerium, all the way till the Germans were killed in Buddha, on the same name. I lived through the war. My boss, when the Russians came in, I didn't go back to work. One day I got married, Elle came back and we got married. There's just so much more to it, but I just can't go into details.
Well, when the war ended?
In 1945.
When did you feel it was safe to go back to your identity?
I tell you, it was a tremendous letdown because I live with the people, and I expected American people should come in, and the Russians came in, and the Russians took all the young girls and the mothers. I don't know if you heard about it. I bet you from your mother you heard the stories. I saved a lot of young people because I speak the language. You know, they came to Hungary and Hungary, and nobody speaks Russian or Czechoslovakian. They should understand. So
how did you speak Russian?
Because I come from, I was born in Czechoslovakia, so you see Russian in Czechoslovakia, and you speak the language. So when the Russians opened the door, the Mongolians, I thought I'd die. They were worse from Hitler's, yeah. They were very, very, very bad people. They opened the prisoners, the jails in Russia, and they said, you go take Hungary when you're alive, you can do anything you want. So they were terrible people when they came into Budapest. But I saved many young lives because I speak the language. And
so when did you feel that you could go back?
And I was, listen to this one. One day I was coming down to see my girlfriend, not too much because we were on the same, she had married, so she had her married name. Then I must go down. I went down. One day I was going on the sidewalk with her brother. He knew I'm living on papers, but he didn't know I'm living on her sister's papers. He was a SS with a black uniform with a...
And he knew you had phony papers?
Yes. But he always said, I'm a SS man, but you had such a tough life. I know you since you were a little girl. I will not touch you. But my girlfriend always said, stay away from my brothers because they'll kill you. I don't trust them. I'm going on the sidewalk and a Jewish kid is coming. This was during the war. A Jewish kid is coming, he has a star on his lapel. And he said, he called me Susan. He knew I'm living on paper, but he called me Susan. He said, you want to look or you want to go away? Because I'm going to kill this kid. And I jumped ahead of him. I said, Tommy, his name was Tommy too, kill me first before you kill this kid. Please don't kill him. You never knew him. He never did nothing to you. He shot him there before my eyes on the sidewalk. I witnessed it all. I watched every day. They were killing the Jewish kids. I used to cry all night with a pillow over my head because where I lived, they didn't know I'm Jewish. I couldn't talk to anyone. I was always on my own. Couldn't run to my girlfriend because she was in danger, so I was always on my own. Nobody ever knew who I am.
When he killed this kid, it was after the war?
It was during the war.
So it was during the war?
During the war. He killed anything, any Jew he saw, he killed him.
Just shot him?
Just shot him on the street, on the sidewalk. Just shot him. This is the SS. You saw the movies, it's nothing what you saw. There is innocent children, they just shot them. No reason. You need no reason just because they were Jewish. They just shot them. And I watched it all.
So when the Russians came in 45, then how long after that did you go back to your name?
I went right away when the Russians came in. I went right away back to Elaine. And I said to her, till I live, I will never forget you. She cried, she jumped, she danced. She says, I saved you. I saved you. I go down to Elaine. My children know Elaine. My mom and Kathy went down to see Elaine.
Where is Elaine?
My Rickman. I brought her out to this country in Hungary, Budapest. She came out here about 10 years ago. She stayed here with me for about a month. And she said, I can never stay in the United States. I want to go back. And she went back. But I go down every 2 years to see her. I'm supporting her. I send her money. Anything I can. I will till I live. I will never forget her. She saved my whole life. She's a very good person.
So did you move out of the ministry then?
I moved out. And my husband came right away to Elaine to see about my life. In fact, my husband came out 2 weeks before from the concentration camp, and I was still in the war. I was still in Buddha because they couldn't kill out the Nazis. When I came back, and my husband said to me, I bought a ring, I want you to marry me. You're not going to marry Tommy anyhow. I want you to marry me. We're going back to our hometown to see maybe your father or your brother came back, and I want to see if my family came back. And we got married. We went back to Ungwa.
Were you surprised?
They didn't come back. I was surprised.
No, were you surprised that he came back and said he wanted to marry you?
He wanted to marry me before, but I didn't. I told him I'm in love with Tommy, and I said I'm just going to be good friends.
So what date did you get married?
We got married in 1945, April 21st, and I came back March 18th. I was still in the war. Would you believe it? Never forgot the date.
So where were you married?
We got married in our hometown,
In a synagogue?
In Ungwa. We went back by train, and guess what? My girlfriend Elaine came back with me. She was so thrilled. I'm alive. She came back. We got married in Ungwa.
In a shul?
In a shul. In a shul outside. There was no Yidden. There was no Jews. There was one Jew and one big dog was my witness. Turn it off. When we came back to Ungvar looking for our family, my husband and me, nobody came back. I got very frightened and I said to Elle, I don't want to marry you. I want to go back to the old people they lived through in Budapest in a ghetto, and I want to go back to them. I got really very cold feet. I felt all my life I was so much on my own, and I lived with so much tragedies all my life. I was just afraid to share my life with somebody else. So I said to my husband, I hope you don't mind. I don't want to marry you. There is no reason. I just don't want to marry you. I went out and I was buying something for the older people who I lived by there, Mr. Spitz. I remember looking for a goose. You know, in Europe, the goose, to buy a goose, a gift for them. And I'm going back to Budapest. And it was a Friday.
Did they live through the war?
They lived through the war in a ghetto in Budapest. They didn't have the time to explore the ghetto, so the few of them lived through the war. And this was Friday. I went out to buy a goose, and Saturday morning I was supposed to come back by myself to Hungary, Budapest. And Saturday morning, my husband, thanks it was Saturday, my husband said to me, Susan, please come with me. I said, where are we going? Just come with me. I won't tell you where we're going. It's a big surprise. I had on a kitchen dress. I remember a plaid, little cotton dress. We went out by justice of a peace. He arranged it all. And there was no Jews. I told you, I think there was someplace 2 Jewish people, and he got a contact with them, and he arranged it. I know nothing about it. And I went out on the justice and the peace, and I'm standing there, and he says, please, to marry, this is the way I got married. I didn't even know I'm getting married. And we stayed there in Ungvar. My husband opened a jewelry store, and I worked with him for about 6 months, 8 months. And then the Russians came in with guns and robbed us. The Russians were worse from the Nazis. Took my husband in the back and took everything we owned. And we got a hold of ourselves. We had nothing really to pack much. We went on the train and we came back to Budapest.
1946?
1946. 1946. We didn't have where to go to live because we had really nothing. We came back. I went back to live with the older people, and my husband went back to live with a friend, and we were married. Then we got together, the two of us, and we left Budapest. We went to Prague.
Both of you went to Prague?
Both of us went to Prague, and we got an apartment in Prague. My husband worked, and I worked.
What did you do there?
My husband was always a jeweler, so he was buying jewelry and selling jewelry.
And you
I
helped him?
Helped very, very. It was very hard. It was very hard. I became pregnant with my older son. You could buy 1 egg a week for a person. You couldn't buy milk. You had to have tickets, bread tickets for milk, for groceries, everything.
Why didn't you leave?
We left Budapest because we were separated. We had no place to live.
Why didn't you leave Europe? What made you stay in Europe?
Wait a minute. My husband in Budapest applied for the visa. He had in his head, he had a one number for his aunt, his father's sister, aunt here in the United States. He wrote a letter to them, and they sent us papers. But the quota in Budapest was so big, we had to wait years till we come. So in Prague, Czechoslovakia had a smaller quota, so we went to Prague because it was a smaller quota. So we stayed in Prague, and we had 1 room in a kitchen apartment, in a bedroom in Prague, and Peter was born. And Peter was born in Prague. He was about 3 months old. 2 big guys walking in. They must weigh, each one of them, 300 pounds. And my husband wasn't home. They knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and he said, "We came in here." They bought a big book. "Sit down and sign this book." And I said, "Till I'm alive, I will never sign the book. Never." Mom picked me up and put me against the wall. He picked me up like I would be 10 pounds. He said, "You better sign the book because you'll never see your husband again." And I said, "I don't care what you're saying. I will never sign this book. Never. You can kill me."
What was the book?
Communist book. When I signed the book, I can never come out.
Oh.
You see, I lived through so much in my lifetime. I knew all the things.
So you knew what it was when you saw it?
I knew right away what they want me to do, because when I signed, I couldn't leave the country. They wouldn't let me out.
And they knew you wanted to leave because you
Sure,
applied
they had
for a
already
visa.
for the visa and passport. My husband was arrested the same evening. They took me to jail with my son. He was in my arms. They took my husband, separated us. I remember they hold us in a room. They were holding me, and Peter was in a little little blanket, and I kept pinching my kids bad, and he should scream. He was screaming so, and the guy said, "Throw it out, I can't stand this crying kid." But I pinched him. This is the reason he cried. And they threw me out. And I took a cab, and I ran away from the police station. You would not believe it. With all I did, I ran away, came home, and the police followed me. "How could you run away?" I said, "I ran away because my kid was very sick, and he was very hungry, and he was crying a lot." My husband was in jail for about 6-7 months in prison. I had to find connections to take him out. Very little money. Here I am all by myself with a little kid, with a little baby. I did find the connection. Any money I had, I spent it all on my husband to take him out from jail. This is the way we stayed there. And I used to go with my kid on the side, with a buggy. After I took out my husband already, I had everything between. My husband was in prison. I arranged everything with a passport, with a visa, with everything. Every day I walked with my kid, Peter. Detective was following me because already I'm not welcome in the country. I'm already a spy because I didn't sign the book.
What kind of connections did you find?
I found a connection. We had a Jewish friend who was in the army, a big man, but he was a lawyer in the army. And I used to go to him. I said, "When how long you are friend? I don't know anyone else. I said, you are lawyer. Please help me. Help to take out my husband from prison." He helped me, but he couldn't take out my husband alone. I had to take out about 5, 6 other guys. It shouldn't be logical. I'm taking out the Jew. You understand? Always the Jew. So I said, "Fine, take out anyone you want. Between them should be my husband." And this is the way I took out L from prison with money. And this guy helped me. He was a Jewish guy, but
Who got the money?
the money, but I had the money.
No, who eventually ended up with the money?
He
The
did.
lawyer?
The lawyer,
Or he had to pay somebody off in the prison?
he had to pay somebody off too. You know, he had to pay somebody off to go through, but he was the main contact for me. He's the one, the only one I really knew who I trusted, because he didn't have a Jewish life. Nobody knew really he's Jewish. I knew, because we knew him so well. But he was the only contact I could contact. He was the only one I can ask, "Please, you must help me." And he's the one who really helped me. After a while, my husband came out. We went away from there. We went to Paris, France. From Prague, on the train, we left everything behind, apartment with everything. Even the bed, little bed for my son, everything. We left for a woman who really helped me there. And we went to France. On the train, a detective was sitting with us all the way through Paris. All the way followed us, all the way through Paris.
Why?
Why? Because he was in jewelry, and he knew we have jewelry, and to take our jewelry from the country. You understand? Matter of fact, my husband gave me a ring, an opal ring. He said to me, "Susan, take off the opal ring." He opened the window and threw it out. He says, "I don't trust this ring. I'm afraid they're going to take us something. They're going to champagne us and they take us off." I remember I had a suede coat. They wouldn't let us out the coat. So I just hung it up in the train in Prague. And they kept asking, "Whose coat is this one?" And I was afraid to say it was mine, because they had a reason to take you down. You're dealing with communism. And then we arrived in Paris, France. I took the coat and we came down. But it was a very, very tough life. So we stayed in Paris, France, in a hotel. I didn't speak French, so I speak perfect German and all the languages. So I go one morning, I'll stay with the baby in the hotel. I go to ask baby food, to buy baby food. And one woman said to me, "Just a moment," but I asked the baby food in German. She said to me, "Just a moment." This was in Paris. All of a sudden, I see the woman has a broom and is chasing me on the sidewalk in France, yelling everybody, "Kill the Nazi, kill the Nazi," with a broom. Because I asked in German, I didn't speak French. I was so terrified in Paris. We were afraid to go out on the sidewalk because they hated so much everyone. Anyone who didn't speak perfect French, they were Germans or they were Nazis. We had a very tough time in Paris, France, too, with our little kid. I remember I washed the diapers in a bidet. I don't know if you know what a bidet is. I had a hard time.
How long were you there?
We were not long in Paris because I went up to the American consul, how long I had American passport. I left Elle in the hotel and I went up to I took a cab. I went up to the American consul and I said, "We do have paid tickets to go to United States. We have it with a big ship. I don't think so. It was Weiss or something. Any ship will get out from